We're back for another week of NFL action here. Week 5 fantasy football is upon us, and we're setting lineups now here with our Week 5 lineup advice. In this particular episode, I'll be talking through 5 players at the running back position that I like in starting lineups here again for Week 5 games. So these are players situationally, whether it's game script, usage, etc. I think they'll play well here. I think that there's some reason to be optimistic here and feel comfortable with these guys being deployed into starting lineups. So if you're new around here, drop down, smash that like button, subscribe, and let me know your individual lineup questions in the comment section below, and let's get started. All right, as always, I'll be starting with my recap of our Week 4 picks here, or the week prior's games, this scenario being Week 4. We had our most successful section or segment here of the start-sit episodes in the running backs portion, going 75%, 3 out of 4. The one drop we had was Alvin Kamara, who was ruled out basically the morning of the Sunday game that they played against the Minnesota Vikings in London. So unexpected news. I thought he'd be ready to go against that football team, being able to heal those ribs for another week, but not the case here. Our only miss was a very, very narrow miss for A.J. Dillon, 8.9 fantasy points in half PPR scoring. My bar is 10 points in half PPR, so missed it by 1.1 points. So if you started A.J. Dillon, it probably didn't break your back unless you had someone really, really dang good on your bench, like for some reason didn't start Josh Jacobs over him or something of that sort. So had a pretty successful week there. Overall for the week, not quite where I wanted to be at. We had some rather unfortunate picks in the sits category, so we were 58% across the board in terms of our picks for Week 4 as a whole. So James Robinson against the Houston Texans is a player I'm starting this week. There might be some panic and a little bit of scarcity after, I keep saying scarcity, that is not the correct use of that term, some panic, let's just say that, after his game in Week 4 against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I think things are going to get a lot better here for J-Rob. J-Rob's taking on a team this week in the Houston Texans with a much less intimidating defensive front. The Philadelphia Eagles front 7 has been absolutely annihilating people. In particular, their front 4, their defensive front has just mauled teams. And after getting out to a 14-0 start, J-Rob and this Jacksonville offense really stalled out here. Trevor Lawrence lost 4 fumbles, the only player to do that in this century. So very unfortunate stuff there. The game script took a wild turn for the worst. I thought they would actually cover in this game. I thought it would be something where the Jags kind of pulled off potentially even an upset here. But after that first quarter, things really went awry. Just 8 rushing attempts on the day for J-Rob. Even in the rainstorm, they just had to start passing the football. Things didn't quite go according to plan here. And they just couldn't sustain consistent offense, especially again on the ground. So he actually split carries down the middle here with Travis Etienne last week, going 8-8. However, I think Etienne's involvement was more of a function of this team trying to catch up and have a pass-happier skill set on the field, as opposed to J-Rob really actually being caught up to by Etienne in terms of overall usage in this offense. So 7.5-point favorites this week for the Jacksonville Jaguars, again pointing to a much more favorable game script than they had a week ago. All great news to hear, all great stuff to consider. And again, I just think that this Jacksonville team is the superior offense when you match them up against the Texans defense. So I think things will go a lot more according to plan for that organization. Jamaal Williams here, the Detroit Lions taking on the New England Patriots. I'm going to continue starting Jamaal as long as he is the clear-cut starter for Detroit right now. Wasn't necessarily used in terms of his snap count percentage in a workhorse fashion, but the touches when he was on the field were absolutely phenomenal last week. He had 20 opportunities in that game and was a player that, when you see the overall production he's doing with the looks he gets, scored 2 touchdowns. He's got 6 touchdowns in 4 games played this year. He's done all of that despite not going above a 50% snap share in any individual contest. That 50% marker came this past week when the Lions took on the Seahawks in a very high-scoring affair here. So this Lions offense continued to go motoring forward. 45 points scored without guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and DJ Chark on the field. This is a talented football team. They have the right pieces to make the ball move down the football field. Taking on the Pats, who allowed over 100 yards to Aaron Jones last week. I just think that this team is very predicated on winning at the line of scrimmage scrimmage and having physicality up front. Jamaal Williams embraces that, and again, his production's been fantastic despite the fact that he's not out there 60+% of snaps. So liking Jamaal Williams here again. As long as Swift is out of the lineup, Jamal's someone I'm giving the nod to in my lineups. I had him as a low-end RB1 last week. He ended up putting up very, very good RB1 numbers for this past week's games. A very manageable game script as well is what I'm expecting here. They are 3-point underdogs, but I could easily see them winning outright against the Patriots in New England, but still early in the year. We'll see about weather and all that stuff as the games get closer. But for now, it's a bit tough to predict that. Miles Sanders here for the Philadelphia Eagles is my next must-start player of the week. The Eagles are traveling to Arizona, to the desert, to play the Cardinals. Now, we saw this last week. Miles Sanders went absolutely nuts on the Jacksonville Jaguars defensive front, and he really continued to progress and assert himself as the lead back for this offense. His touches went up. We saw him have 27 carries on the ground, a couple opportunities in the passing game as well. And he is starting to grasp a higher percentage of the opportunity share for this Eagles backfield. Now, there was no Boston Scott last week. However, Sanders absolutely balled out. This is a guy who we knew was going to be efficient. He's getting the goal line carries he deserves here finally in 2022. And this is an Arizona Cardinals team that, to be quite frank, I think is going to be outmatched on the football field this weekend. For Miles Sanders and this Eagles, just the way that they can win the line of scrimmage on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, you see how their defensive front just bully balls opposing offensive lines, and how their offensive line conversely wins their matchup at the line of scrimmage. They're creating effective holes for Sanders. He's got room to run, and he's very explosive when he gets into space here. They're 5-point favorites against the Cardinals. Again, game script being something I'm going to keep coming back to here and these lineup advice segments. I didn't nearly focalize my content on that, I think, as much as I should have last week, and those were some areas where, I had a couple of misses in the game script category, but I probably should have paid even closer attention to that because it just got away from us at some point. So Sanders for me here. I like the matchup. I don't think that Arizona is necessarily a team that has the playmakers to get out to a big lead here and force Philadelphia into a negative game script. Positive game scripts are insanely important for running backs, especially guys that aren't catching a high volume of passes. So for me, we saw the Arizona Cardinals offense struggle against Carolina for the first half of football in last week's games. I don't think they're going to have a much better time moving against Philadelphia, who has a better front and arguably a better secondary as well. So all around, I think things play out in the direction of giving this Philadelphia Eagles offense a lead, being able to maintain it, or at least play a close football game here. I do expect them to win. And of course, being 5-point favorites, they are expected to win by a respectable margin. And then finally, Damien Harris here for the New England Patriots. Now, I will also include Ramondre Stevenson on this. I can only toss one guy up on the screen at a time here. But Damien Harris, of course, is technically still the more productive back right now, despite the fact that I like selling him if you can in terms of trade advice, and prefer in PPR formats to have my hands on Ramondre Stevenson. Situationally, he gets really good usage and some quality pass game opportunities. But Damien Harris has still been productive on the ground. Last week, I did have him as a sit. I thought he'd be a touchdown-dependent play. The Pats, this is the one spot where we missed in terms of game script. The Pats were 10-point dogs at Green Bay in week 4. However, it should have been more evident, even despite having a backup quarterback, that Green Bay wasn't going to cover. Their offense just isn't high-powered enough to bounce out to one of those leads. They weren't able to. The game was tight throughout. It went to overtime. The Pats were able to continue running the football because Green Bay never got out to that big lead. So in terms of that analysis there, that's where we went wrong. However, being 3-point favorites at home this time against Detroit, a team that just doesn't have the defensive prowess to put teams away here. They've actually allowed the most points in terms of just allowing offenses to score on them. In the entire National Football League, 141 points allowed versus 140 points scored. That difference is the difference between possibly being 3-1 or 2-2, and now they're 1-3. So obviously that stuff matters for them in terms of just an organizational standpoint there. But Damien Harris should have some relatively efficient rushing here if he can get 15, 16 touches on the ground, average 4 yards per carry. Probably, of course, now that I'm picking him to start this week, it'll be the first time since week 1 that he doesn't find the end zone and score a touchdown, and then that's where I'll end up getting burned here. He's a touchdown-dependent play, but his efficiency should be awesome in this matchup. We saw Rashad Penny come out last week and have over 150 yards rushing on 27 carries, so the efficiency and the opportunity is there. That's why I also say Ramondre Stevenson, if you have him, a lower end, possible, not a lower end RB3. He would be a higher end RB3 for me this week, or a moderate level flex play for me in PPR formats. I think he'll catch passes, and probably one of these guys will find the end zone. This is a very run-centric team right now without Mac Jones on the field. They're pretty run-centric with him out there as well, but even more so when relying on third string and third-tier backup quarterback play in Bailey Zappi. So, we'll talk about that stuff as the week continues, but those are 5 running backs I'm liking for this week's matchups. Again, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, what matchups you want to see. Here we go. We actually have one more name today. I apologize. I actually almost missed that. We've got Jeff Wilson Jr. here of the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Carolina Panthers. Good thing I glanced out my notes quick before I gave my intro there. Jeff Wilson, this is a player that while he's not necessarily, I'm not going to call him a workhorse running back because we've got, Deebo Samuel, of course, as everyone knows, lining up in the backfield, taking carries, getting screen passes at the line of scrimmage, which are basically just pseudo run game plays here. Jeff Wilson's a player I like in this matchup a lot right now. San Francisco, I think, is just going to blow the brakes off the Panthers this week. There is nothing Carolina's offense can do to move the football down the field except for broken plays and broken coverage schemes. You've got a quarterback in Baker Mayfield whose number one issue is, in terms of his own problems, accuracy is an issue, but also offensive line play, protection. And this 49ers defense is so physical. They fly around the football field. They're going to be eating up Baker alive. I think they're going to force probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 turnovers in this game, whether it's fumbles, interceptions, whatever the case is. And I think that they're just going to mop the floor with the Carolina Panthers. You know that meme of the Panthers mascot diving off of their Jumbotron there? That's going to be circulating again this week after this game. The 49ers, surprisingly, are only 6.5-point favorites. I don't understand why that's the case here. I just think that across the board, the physicality, the personnel they have, the playmakers, it's going to be, in my opinion, an extremely one-dimensional game and a one-sided affair. And with that comes a great positive game script for San Francisco. I think Jeff Wilson's going to get enough touches to be a top 24 play this week. Maybe he finds the end zone again this week. He's been making some really good runs. When he gets touches, he's been able to make defenders miss in the hole and get to the second level of the defense. He doesn't really have home run hitting breakaway speed where he's going to make these huge runs that he just rips off the sideline here, but he is a quality lead back for this offense. So you're going to have to do on 15, 16 carries here, but I expect that number could rise and crack the 20 attempts threshold if they're able to get up to this big lead that I think they can here. But he's been able to do it the last couple of weeks. I didn't feel confident in him against the Denver Broncos. He went out there, scored a touchdown, I believe, and was a great player in that matchup, besides the fact that he ended up fumbling the game away. And then you've also got, he had over 100 yards scrimmage in that contest. And then you've got this past week where he was able to basically make some runs and be a productive player against the Los Angeles Rams on Monday Night Football. So Jeff Wilson is a fringe starter in most leagues. I like him in this matchup because I expect San Francisco, to have their way at the line of scrimmage and just push around this Carolina defensive front and just overall win this game by a healthy margin, probably more than a touchdown. If I was a betting man, which in some instances I am, I might just take San Francisco and swallow the points there. It is a big number, but I do feel confident in the matchup this week. So to recap, Miles Sanders, Jeff Wilson Jr., Jamaal Williams, Damien Harris / Ramondre Stevenson, and James Robinson here are our must-start running backs for this week. Again, as I started to say earlier, drop your questions down in the comment section below. Smash the like button if you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.